All right, everybody, welcome back to the What Worked for Me podcast. Today I have Rashad, who's joining us from Georgia. He's a nursing student and he works in the medical field. I'm really excited to have him on because he lost 221 pounds recently. He's done a lot of different methods to get there, so we're really going to dive in and see everything he had to change. But first off, I really like to start at the very beginning. So no one's born at, you said 400 pounds-ish was about your largest. So how did you get up to 400 pounds? Did you start out as a big kid? Did you gain it later in life?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question because I was a pretty big kid and I didn't realize where my weight was coming from as a kid because I was actually pretty active as a child. I played different sports. Ran track, and I also played football. So I was very active, and I also went outdoors. I didn't just sit around the house and play video games because I was an '80s baby. So we had video games, but that wasn't just like technology like it is now. So I was actually an outdoors kid that was very active. So I didn't know where my weight was coming from at the time until I got older and I got some blood work done. And it came to find out that I had a condition called low testosterone caused by hypogonadism. You know, that's where you're just not producing a lot of testosterone, which contributed to my weight gain. So I started getting a hormone replacement therapy, and that started helped me start to lose the weight. And I was actually pretty successful when I went to college. You know, I actually lost the weight on my
So
own.
you found out you kind of had a hormonal condition. It sounds like late
Yeah,
high school years, kind of, probably 16 to 18, sometime in there. And is that at that point were you all the way up at the 400 pounds, or where were you?
yeah. When I was in high school, my highest was like 330
Okay.
because I was playing football at the time. So
Yeah, I understand. I played football too. It's good to be
yeah,
big in that sport.
yeah,
So you find out that you had kind of some underlying conditions, and you started hormone replacement therapy, and then for a little while, did you start losing weight? Then is that what
yeah.
happened
I
in
actually
college?
started losing weight. Yeah, I shortly when I start shortly right before I started college, I started to walk and exercise, and I actually lost the weight on my own. Like back in my early 20s, because you know how it is when you're younger, your metabolism speeds up, you're pretty fast, and you know the hormone replacement therapy started to work. So I actually got down. I think my lowest I had gotten down in college was like 205.
So you lost 100 pounds in college then. So
Yeah, pretty much.
how did that feel the first time you did it? Was that pretty great?
Yeah, I felt very confident when the first time I lost weight back when I was like 21, 22. And that's when the attention from the women started to come. Because prior to that, I had I never got anything for Valentine's Day. I never got a love letter. I mean, there was no attention. But when I lost the weight, I actually started getting attention, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So that felt pretty good.
I'm sure that helped. I'm sure as
Yeah.
a young man, attention from females is always a good thing. That's something you're always excited to receive.
Yeah, I
So
was a late, I want you to call a late bloomer.
yeah. Um, so you got all the way down to 205, but then I know your biggest was almost 405, so
Or,
almost 200 pounds.
yeah,
So I take it you started to regain weight. How did
yeah,
you find yourself up at 400 pounds?
yes. When I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with some underlying mental health conditions
Yeah,
called I was with depression and something called schizoaffective disorder with the depressive type, which is it's not schizophrenia because I don't have the hallucinations, but it's on the schizophrenia spectrum,
got it.
which alters your thinking. So when I was started taking antipsychotics as well and antidepressants, that caused me to gain weight. And then when I was diagnosed at 30 at type 2 diabetes, I took some diabetic medication that caused me to gain weight. So as I got, as we get older, our metabolism began to slow down. And so I had got up to like maybe 340 when I was 30.
Yeah. And that was all because of medication. So
You need a medication.
how does that feel? Because I'm sure it's really frustrating to be on a medication that helps in one part of your life, but then is destroying another part. So how did you cope with that mentally, like the weight gain and trying to navigate all of the complications with that?
Well, the way I coped with it was not the healthy way, and I want to recommend it for anybody else. I actually started drinking alcohol,
Oh, yeah,
with, and that exacerbated the problem.
right.
that made the problem worse. And then, shortly after, I gave marriage, I gave marriage a try. That didn't work out. And I actually just started, the drinking got worse. And that's how I ended up getting way up to on 400 pounds.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens a lot of times is you get in these cycles, right, where something causes
Yeah.
something worse and that causes weight gain and you're looking
Mhm.
for something. So how old were you when you got up to 400 pounds?
I was 37.
37. Okay. And so was there, I know before this we talked about that you did end up getting gastric bypass surgery. Was there a moment that you just realized like, okay, something has to change? What happened that made you decide to go get gastric bypass?
Well, I was like, okay, well, I was at a very low point in my life where I just wasn't trying to do anything. I was just going through the motions. And I felt like I wasn't living my life to the fullest. I felt like there was more, purpose to my life than just living to eat and just living to drink. So when I went to the doctor told me I had all these health problems like blood work came back, blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, A1C 13, pretty
Wow,
much
really high.
everything else. Yeah, luckily I didn't have any heart problems. Everything else was pretty good. Just my blood pressure, my diabetes were the main two that was out of control. And the doctor said if I don't stop drinking, if I don't make changes now while I'm 37, I won't make it to 47.
Yeah, I'm sure that probably hit you. That
Yeah.
knowing you have less than 10 years left is a can be a scary moment. So I know, did it sound like eventually did you stop drinking then? Is that one of the things
Yeah.
you did?
Yeah, I
Was that
definitely
be
stopped drinking
was that before or after the surgery?
before the surgery.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How were you able to separate yourself away from alcohol?
Well, luckily, you got different categories of drinkers. You got alcoholics, people that require intervention because it's like an addiction.
Yeah,
Then you got people like me who are just heavy drinkers.
yeah,
I wasn't really considered an alcoholic because I stopped on my own. I don't think a real alcoholic could have done that.
yeah.
So I sort of just used my willpower and just went cold turkey and just quit.
All right. And so I know you were using the alcohol as a coping mechanism for the
Coping
stress.
mechanism. Mm-hmm.
What did you, I'm sure stress was still there. What did you replace it with that was a healthier mechanism?
I started exercising. I started on walking. I started journaling.
Okay.
Because a lot of my thoughts, I just started journaling. Like anything I'm going through, if I'm feeling some type of way, I just started journaling.
All
And
right.
just started going to psychotherapy, started getting therapy and counseling.
And that helped a lot with the stress and kind of the reason that you were drinking the alcohol. So when you stopped drinking, did you start to lose weight then
Yes.
before the surgery? So
Yes, I actually started to lose weight before the surgery. I started to lose weight because even though I was 404 at my highest, you actually have to lose weight to be approved for the surgery.
okay.
So before the surgery, even though I went through the process to get approved for the surgery, I had got all the way down. I went from 404 to 333.
Wow. So you lost almost 100 pounds before you even
Yeah,
got the surgery.
yeah.
Was it required to lose that much, or did you just lose that
I
much?
just ended up losing that much cause they didn't want to do the surgery because I was what you call a risk. I was
Yeah.
too much of a health risk. So I had to lose 50 pounds even before the surgery. So I ended up losing more than 50 pounds. And then after that, they approved the surgery and I ended up getting in the gastric bypass.
Awesome. So let's talk about the process of the gastric bypass. You lose about what 60, 70 pounds it sounds like, and then you get approved for the gastric bypass. How was the experience with the surgery? What was the recovery like?
Well, recovery wasn't too bad. You be sore, obviously you're sore, and you be on an eating restriction, but I think the hardest part for a lot of people is the eating restriction because you going from eating what you want to eat to where you can only eat liquids, you can only drink liquids and eat this and eat that. So it's more mental than physical, in my opinion. I don't think the physical is too bad because they got technology where they're not just cutting you wide open anymore. They actually do a lot of laser surgery where they just go inside you and do the surgery. So you may have marks on your body, but you don't see those big gashes like those previous like early
Yeah,
surgeries. So you're not as sore as you normally would back in the old days.
that makes sense. So let's talk about that restrictive diet because I know those are pretty strict right there at the beginning. So how did you psychologically handle you know, maybe that first week where you can only drink liquids and slowly.
Oh, it was rough. Oh, it was rough. You talking about somebody who loves. I wasn't real big on sugar, but you talking about somebody who loves meat, like
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Boy, it was rough. It was pretty tough.
yeah. I'm sure. I mean, food culture is a big part of kind of where you live and being in the South. I know.
In the South, growing up in the South, and you surrounded by food and commercial seafood, and yeah.
Yeah. So that first week was a little bit of shell shock. Then when all of a sudden you're like, wow, I have to be eating through a straw, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
as you start to move away from the surgery, how long was it before you could start to eat like normal food and stuff again?
Again, I say it's about a time frame about 4 weeks. It puts you on after the surgery, you're gonna be on a pure liquid diet. Then you start to eat soft foods, pureed. Then you go to soft foods, and then after about that fourth week, you can actually start trying to sample different foods, see what your stomach can tolerate. Because the surgery affects everybody different. Some people, when they try to jump too fast and try to eat solid foods, when they get on that fourth week, they end up throwing up and stuff. So you just have it's like trial and error, seeing what your stomach can tolerate.
Okay. And so you just had to kind of slow down, figure out
Mm-hmm.
what you could eat. How quickly did you start losing weight after the surgery?
Oh, it didn't take long at all. After the surgery, I started to lose weight pretty rapidly.
Yep. And so I know right before this, we talked about that you did kind of hit a plateau after the surgery. So how much weight did you lose before you got to where you kind of hit that plateau?
Well, actually, when I had got my surgery date was 333. After the surgery, I had got down to like 240.
Okay. So you lost almost
But
another 100 pounds.
yeah, almost 100 pounds. Lost about 90, about maybe 87 pounds, but then it stopped. It
Got
got
it.
to a stopping point. I hit a plateau.
And so during that time, what did your nutrition look like? Did it change a lot after surgery? Or were you just eating kind of the same stuff in smaller portions?
That's basically what I was doing. I was eating the same stuff in smaller portions.
Okay. And then that brought you down to about 240.
Mm-hmm.
So how long did you get stuck at 240?
I was stuck at 240 for about a month because sometimes they tell you when you get the surgery there's gonna be stalls, there's gonna be you're not gonna lose it that fast on some months, so just be patient. So I tried to give it a month to be patient to see if you know I was gonna start to lose, but then I knew something was wrong after that month went by, and I didn't lose any more weight. So I went to my doctor, and the doctor pointed out some medications I was on that were causing weight gain, like glipizide and Vega, which is an antipsychotic, and
So
effective.
those same medications that were giving you problems beforehand, that was one of the things. And so were you able to find medications that still help, but that were
Yes, I was
off?
able to replace. I was able to replace them all. Yes, I was.
Okay. And so that's a really frustrating point to be in. How did you handle kind of that plateau psychologically and not let it get to you?
Well, it was pretty discouraging, but I had started making progress because I was in my prerequisite to get into nursing school, so I had something to keep my mind off. I was
Yeah,
already trying to, start nursing school and started my medical career, so I had other things to focus on where I didn't get too down. Well, to
yeah.
keep my mind off stuff. So I had started to turn my life around at that point.
I think that's important to make sure that you're not solely focused on just like a number or anything like that and have other things in
Mhm.
your life. Um, you brought up something that's pretty interesting there. So I think at this point, I mean, we'll keep talking about the weight loss in just a second, but at this point, you're down, what, 170-ish pounds already? I mean, it's a lot. And you just said that you were turning your life around. Was the weight loss a big part of turning your life
Absolutely,
around? So
absolutely,
what
absolutely.
what changed that let you go back to school and do all those type of things?
Well, after COVID hit, I had been like prior to that, I was a teacher for 15, I was a teacher for 15 years, and I felt like I wasn't living my life to my fullest potential. So felt like, okay, well, I'm losing the weight. Maybe I should push myself to go higher. I've always been interested in the science anyway because I was a science teacher. So let me see if I can get a career in the nursing, something like that. So I retired from education after teaching for 15 years, and I said, I've done pretty good with my money, and I had paid all my student loans off from teaching. So I said, okay, let me see if I can get some scholarships and see if I can go back, school for nursing. So I had sort of just hit that turning point in my life where it was time for a career change.
That's awesome. And losing weight just kind of helped you,
Helped me decide, if I
you
could
know,
change this part of my life, let me change that part. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's one of the most powerful things about like progress in life is it's kind of like a rising tide raises all ships where you
Mhm.
should really start doing good with your health and then it kind of illuminates some of the other places. You're like, well, I think I can do a little better with my career and with my family and
Mhm.
some of the other things. So I know losing weight kind of it helped a lot with your career. Did it change a lot with your family or other interactions with people? How much different was it interacting with people, almost 200 pounds lighter?
Yeah, because my family well, my brother in particular was very concerned. He was getting on me pretty regularly about my health. He was very concerned that, if I didn't make any changes, then something was gonna happen to me. Because we had a family member that actually got up to like 600 pounds that passed away in his early 20s. So he didn't want to see the same thing happen to me. So,
Yeah.
but as I started to lose weight, that dynamic changed and our relationship improved. And so he saw that I was making an effort. So
That's great. Yeah, I think it can really benefit almost all areas in life. So, um, getting back to the weight loss, so you got your medications changed. Did you immediately start to lose weight again as soon as you got the medications changed, or were there other things that you had to change as well?
well, as I was changing the medication, that was just one step. I actually had to find an eating habit that worked for me. I didn't have the patience to count calories. I wasn't about to count no calories. So what I found worked for me was called intermittent fasting, where I only ate 2 meals a day in 12-hour time frames or intervals. So I would eat at 6 o'clock in the morning, let 12 hours go by, and then eat again until 6 o'clock at night. So that way my body would go into ketosis and I would start losing weight that way. And I also started going to Planet Fitness and I was walking 4 miles a day
Okay.
for
So
about 5 days.
let's talk about the exercise first. So up to this point, did you were you doing a lot of exercise, or was it mostly just walking?
Mostly just walking. But when I went to Planet Fitness, I started adding weight training to it too.
Okay. And how did the weight training affect your progress?
It caused me not to have as much loose skin as I would after losing that much weight. Because if you're losing like 200 pounds, you have a lot of loose skin. But the weight training prevented me from having a lot of loose skin, I think.
Helped you kind of fill out your frame a little bit and probably feel
Mm-hmm.
better. And I'm sure you just felt better too as you were
Yeah, I felt
exercising,
overall very much better. Yep.
right? I'm sure being a football player, you weren't, new to weights and that type of thing.
Yeah, that really helped. I didn't have to go like I wasn't starting from scratch basically. Yeah.
Yeah, knew a little bit from back when you were in school.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the nutrition, what made you decide to one do intermittent fasting? Um, I know you kind of said you didn't want to count calories, but then that's actually a really interesting way of doing it, where a lot of times people will do like a 6 or 8 hour eating window. You basically just said you're going to eat first thing in the morning, and then when you go to bed and kind of skip lunch. What made you decide to do that?
Because it took the thinking part out of it. I didn't have to count calories. I didn't have to measure food. I didn't have to decide what to eat. I was basically still eating the same things, except it was in moderation and there was a time to eat. So I didn't have to change much. There was not much thinking involved. See, with the keto diet, you have to eat this type of food. With counting calories, you have to eat a certain amount of food. With other types of diet, measuring food, you have to do this too much thinking. But
You
with
just
just
don't want to deal
fasting,
with that.
I don't want to deal with all that thinking. Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you just say, hey, I'll just skip lunch, and then
that's it. That's it. Yep. Yep. Basically, yep.
and I like it. I'm all about keeping it simple. And
Keep
so
it simple.
yeah, you decided you skip lunch, you kind of start making that work, and then is that what got you down that next almost what 60 pounds? Just
Yep, they got me down to where I am now. Yeah, yes, sir. Once I switched my medications out, like once I switched my diabetic medications, the antipsychotics, the antidepressants, and changed all the other habits that got me to where I am today.
yeah. And so let's talk about a couple things. What are the biggest differences that you've noticed in life, walking around at 180 pounds compared to 400?
The shopping for clothes, I don't have to be like searching for the big men sizes. Like, you know, I
I'm
get a
sure
lot
that's
of clothes.
great to like walk into a store and be able to throw on like a large and not have to worry about trying to find, a 3 or 4X.
Yeah, I feel like my mind is a lot more clearer too. I'm not as sad, or I'm not as down on myself as much as I was when I was bigger. I feel I wake up a lot more reinvigorated,
That's great.
I encouraged and things like that.
I yeah, you said waking up. I know something that weight loss can really affect your sleep. Did you notice that your sleep patterns
Yeah,
changed
oh,
during?
absolutely. Yeah, I started sleeping better,
Yeah,
having more energy.
all those things just got better.
Yeah, because at this point I was in my 40s. I'm like 45. It is like my early 40s at this point. So yeah.
Okay, so sleep got better. Um, how was how are the changes like in your body? You having like joint pain and that type of stuff that went away? Do you feel?
Yeah, joint pain got better, like my knees and my back. Absolutely.
And did you have to do any additional exercise or training for that, or is that just not carrying the weight anymore?
A combination of both.
Yeah. What were the
Like you
ex
still got to strengthen your core, like your abs, your core. If you don't want to have back pain and stuff, you have to strengthen your core. So I started doing like core exercise, like crunches and things like that. And
right?
that helped with back pain.
And so looking back, something I always think is valuable is, one of the reasons I love this podcast, you get to talk to someone who's actually been through, the journey, right? Looking back, what do you think were some of like the biggest mistakes that you made along the way?
Well, definitely some of the bigger mistakes I made along the way is thinking I could still eat what I wanted to eat after surgery.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
how'd that go?
a lot of people get the surgery and think the surgery gonna do it all. But see, what'll end up happening is you'll lose some of the weight, but you'll still get to the point where you'll stop. And so if you get the surgery and you're still not happy with your body, what have you really accomplished?
Right. Let's talk about that for a little bit because that's something that is super hard. How do you handle, you know, you get the surgery and you said you hit a wall around 170 pounds of loss, which is still incredible. But I think that can be hard where it's like, you're down 170 pounds and you still don't love what you look like. How do you keep that from discouraging you and actually turn into a motivation?
Um, well, like I said, at this point, I had started trying to go into the medical field. So instead of just getting discouraged and giving up and just reverting back to where I was, I just started searching for a solution. I stopped being more problem focused and started being more solution focused. And I was like, well, if I came this far, there has to be a reason why I can't go further. So I just started looking for different solutions.
That makes sense. And I love what you said there. You said you went from being problem focused to solution focused, which is really hard for I think a lot of people to do. How are you able to make that mental shift?
When you start seeing progress in certain areas of life, you learn that there are solutions out there for things that you're struggling with if you're willing to make the effort to find them. So when I started seeing results in certain areas of my life, whether it was my career, school, my weight at the time, I started seeing noticeable progress in those areas. Even though I wasn't where I wanted to be in those areas, I was making progress in those areas. So I felt like there was no reason to go backwards. As long as I keep going forward, it doesn't matter how fast I get to my goal, as long as I'm making progress.
That makes sense. And are you where you want to be then? Do you want to stay at 185? Is that kind of where?
Yeah, I'm pretty much for my BMI. My BMI is like 23, 24, which is your healthy range. You want to be you want to be under 25. So my BMI wise, I'm pretty much where I want to be size wise. It's more so about just fat composition and just filling out with muscle and just being like toned and things like that.
Yeah,
And I still have a little bit of loose skin that I'm gonna see if nature fits it. Cause sometimes it takes about a good 12 months for that loose skin to retract itself. So I'm not gonna rush into no plastic surgery or anything. I'm just gonna give it time to let it correct itself. Because I'm not really out there trying to press anybody anyway. So I feel like I could just focus on school, keep exercising, just focus on focus on trying to better my life in those areas, and then let the skin correct itself. So I'm pretty much where I want to be weight wise.
that's pretty great. How I know you brought up BMI, but I think sometimes there's even some intuitive facts. What made you how did you realize like, hey, 185 is where I like? I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with weight loss is they get on the weight loss train and they really like the feeling of losing weight and seeing that number go down, but then they don't necessarily know when to get off. So how did you
Yeah.
decide, hey, 185 is good?
Well, what made me decide that was I would look in the mirror and I liked it the way I look because sometimes, some people have that body dysmorphia where they don't like the way they look.
Yeah,
But when I look in the mirror, I actually like the way I look now. So
that's
I'm like,
great.
I'm fit. I'm 6'2", 180, which is still a pretty big guy.
Yeah,
If you compare that to the average man, 5'5", 150, I'm still a pretty big guy. So I'm like, but I'm not so big where it's like like I carry myself well now. So I'm like, well, okay, there's nothing wrong with the way I look. Okay, but sure, could I change this or fix that? Sure, but it's not something that I just had to rush into.
that makes sense. And how about all of the previous health stuff? So I said, I know you said you had diabetes, you had high blood pressure. What happened with all that during the weight loss?
All of that improved as well. All of my mental health conditions as well as my diabetes are in remission.
That's great. And do you still need medication for them, or are
Yeah.
they okay?
Yes, I still have to take medication for maintenance in those areas, and I still get therapy and counseling. But there are all my medical providers told me that they're in remission.
That's great. Congratulations. That's really awesome. You're able to take control of your health that way. So I think weight loss is always the first step, and then kind of the long-term goal, and the second step is weight maintenance. What are you doing to make sure you don't regain weight? Because that's one of the hardest things that people face, right? You yourself had regained almost 100 pounds earlier in your life. So what are you doing now to make sure you stay where you want to be for the rest of your life?
Well, in order to maintain my weight loss, I make sure I continue to make mental health and physical health a priority. I continue to make exercise a priority, and things like that. And as long as I continue to make my mental health and my physical health a priority, I think the way to take care of itself.
That's great. I really, really like that. And so I know another quick pitfall that some people get into is they get like the weight loss goal and then they um, get to where they want to be and then they don't have like that next health goal. What was the thing that you were able to replace it with to keep working on your physical and mental health?
Like I say, right now I'm at the size I want to be, but I'm not 100%. There are still areas for improvement, like the muscle tone and the body fat composition. So I still work in those areas. It's just that I'm not trying to get smaller anymore.
Right. And so you're just working on strength training and body
Hmm.
composition and trying to do
Yeah.
everything you can to have as much muscle mass as possible.
Yep.
I really like that. So, um, I think we're just about ready to wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we end the episode?
Yeah. Once you get to middle age, like me, like I'm in my 40s, you start like being concerned about the next generation as you are about your own aspiration. Because see, when I was in my 20s and 30s, you're pretty much chasing your own dreams and your own goals and,
Yeah,
trying to follow your own pursuits. But when you get middle age, like where I am now, you start trying to inspire other people that they can be, more too. So that's probably where I am in life. So that's the reason why I did this podcast.
yeah. And I think that's great. I mean, that's really the purpose of the podcast is, getting to sit down with someone who's actually done it. It's hard to lose. I've only lost 100 pounds. I can't imagine what losing 200 pounds feels like. I mean, that's incredible. And I think your story is really going to help other people to let, them know it's possible and there's different ways and that it's not always a super clean process that, there's things that are going to be bumps in the road along the way. So, but I really appreciate your story. I think we'll just wrap it up there. Rashad, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks
Well,
to all of our guests for listening, and we'll end it right there.